Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 4 of the Apex Hour. I am once again joined by my two fantastic co-hosts, 2OP, Nerf OG, and The Count. Today we're going to be talking extensively about Borderlands and the recent Ghost Recon Breakpoint reveal. But to get things started, how you guys been? How was your week? Count, obviously you were away at St. Jude Plays. I hope that went really well for you.
Dude, it's been a long couple weeks, man. I had a lot of travel back to back, but it's good to be back. Yeah, it was an awesome experience. Well, I'll give you a little bit more about that here in a
OP, how's your week been, dude? How's the Twitch streaming been going? How's the grind been going? You
Oh man,
checked out a few other games this week, I noticed. It's like jamming
yeah,
on some other stuff.
I've been dabbling in a lot of different titles, just trying to find something to split the time with Apex, because I'm a little burnt out. I don't know, trying to explore a little bit.
Yeah, it's a
But
lot,
it's
a lot
been
of
good.
Apex. It's a lot of Apex. Oh man, so I guess let's start with your St. Jude stuff. Count, you were gone. I mean, how many days long was that? I'm gonna be honest, I just didn't. I get like the
So
basic
yeah,
idea of what it is, but
so yeah, let me give you the rundown. So basically, what happened was they bring out once a year, they bring out a bunch of Twitch broadcasters. This year there were 270 of us total. I think
damn,
this is their largest summit that they've had. So I got to actually spend some time with Mr. Frothy Omen for a while, which was cool. Got to see some friends and pretty much anybody that did some fundraising last year and met a certain threshold that they raised. They bring us out. It's 2 full days there, so St. Jude actually took care of our travel, our hoteling. They fed us, and throughout the 2 days, we got to do fun things like tour the hospital. We got to hear stories from other content creators, some stories from the people that are working there, and basically, what they want to do is give you a little bit of insight into where the money you're raising is going. So, right, a lot of us raise a lot of money for St. Jude, and they want to, exactly show you, well, what does your money go to? What kind of an impact are you having on these kids? So some of the cool things I got to do was we got to take a tour of the hospital itself. And what's really cool about this place itself is that it doesn't feel like a hospital. So I'm sure you guys have known, right? You go into a hospital, it's got like that real sterile smell, and it's just like gross, disgusting, and depressing. This place has got artwork all over the walls. It's got some of the art that the kids do themselves. The hallways are painted. They have the 4 different seasons lining the different hallways, and just the mood and the vibe there is really different, right? A lot of the kids there are very sick, but it doesn't feel like a hospital, and they're very upbeat there, which was really cool.
that's awesome.
So yeah, so basically at the end of the 2 days, we got to they gave us some tips on how to do effective fundraising, an opportunity for us to network with each other, do some collaborative things with each other, and just give you some tips and tools as to what their mission is, why it's important to you, and just kind of recharge your batteries for the year ahead.
Awesome, dude. Speaking of fundraising, if you guys want to head over and help Count out with his May 2019 fundraising, you can do so at the link I just popped in the chat there. Man, that stuff's like where you can basically always be running like fundraising stuff for St. Jude, right?
You can, yeah. So the month of May is their major. They call it like their prizing month, but that's their main fundraising month. You can set up a campaign for them any time of the year, but most of the time, right, they funnel and say, hey, May is our big push to try and get all of our Twitch creators on board. I think
Awesome.
so. Some interesting things that we learned there too. I think over 100 different countries were represented there across Twitch streamers. So for the St. Jude Play Live like arm of their fundraiser, they're actually the largest source of international donations to them, which is pretty crazy. I think to date, I can't remember if it was just last year alone or today, but I think that they're approaching like $6 million from just people on Twitch, which is pretty incredible.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, between like Twitch and just like, GDQ and stuff like every year, I just feel like it's insane, man. How much money gets raised for stuff like this via just like people playing video games. Like,
Yeah, I got to meet I'm not sure if you've ever seen, so the group that does the Zeldathon run, are you familiar with that?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I got to meet a lot of them. I got to meet like the guy that coordinates it, a couple of their runners there, and it's kind of cool. You just running into people. It's like, oh, I've watched that event, or hey, I watch GDQ every year, and the people there that help set up and run those events were at this summit. So kind of just cool to be able to meet them and network with them a little bit too.
Yeah, that's super cool, dude. Because there, it's just like, I don't know, when you watch big events like that, right? Like big fundraising events, they start to feel like, oh, like it's that guy who like makes all this happen, and this person, that person. You start to recognize their names, and then to see him at something like that, that's pretty freaking cool, man. Especially when it's for
Yeah,
such a good
it
cause
is
in the
exciting.
end.
I'm excited. Looking forward to going back next year, but it just kind of helps, put things into perspective a little bit, especially for some of us that are fortunate enough to be able to be on Twitch and do all this fun stuff. And those kids are very aware that that Twitch comes into town for that week. So it's kind of cool because a lot of people wear like their Twitch purple stuff, their Twitch hoodies, whatever the case might be. And when you're walking around the hospital and that stuff, and they see that you're wearing, like purple Twitch stuff, they might not know who you are individually, but when they just kind of see your Twitch gear and their eyes light up. So that's kind of a cool feeling that they just, they know what we do, and they look forward to that week every year.
That's fantastic, dude. So once again, guys, if you want to help count out, I got a link in the chat there. And just in general, man, around this time of month, it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. If you're watching a lot of other streamers you follow, there are a lot of other content creators, you'll find that a lot of them are doing stuff for St. Jude. So keep an eye on that. And, if you can spare a buck or cost of a cup of coffee now and then, it definitely goes a long way. And yeah, let's just keep being awesome, right? There's like, again, dude, with like it's not like it doesn't happen in other places, but I feel like there's definitely like an excessive level of like good spirit and charity behind video games, especially over the last 5-6 years. So
they have an interesting perspective too. I mean, they equate us, being on Twitch, on YouTube, whatever it might be your platform, as, the radio DJs of the new generation, where, the reach that we have across our different communities is actually really powerful. And just, having tools to be able to reach people that they normally wouldn't reach, through video games, through just, whatever we do in content we're creating, actually is a big part of what they do over there. So, all of us, pretty cool how it all goes down.
yeah, that's a whole new audience, right? Like you go from appealing to, if you're doing something else somewhere, you're maybe not reaching all of these young people, older people who don't spend time watching traditional TV or don't watch sports or something like that and don't see these other opportunities come up, and they're over on Twitch, and now you've got a whole nother audience that can help out. So awesome stuff. Let's talk video games. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about Borderlands 3, but that happened a couple weeks ago now, so I figure we start with the more recent news and talk a bit about Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which was revealed in full today for the very first time, and it is a sequel to Wildlands, like a direct sequel, which is pretty freaking cool and kind of unexpected.
I'm shocked actually that I was thinking about, okay, so, the way that Ubisoft's been going, they've been reviving some of these old franchises, right? Ghost Recon, when Wildlands was announced, I was actually really surprised that, they're making a new Ghost Recon game. I'm surprised that we're actually even seeing a Ghost Recon sequel before we're seeing a Splinter Cell remake. It's interesting that they're, doubling down on Ghost Recon.
Yeah, so when I first saw the rumors for it, right, when they did the whole in-game with Operation Oracle, they did this SkellCon like little thing they started passing around. They're like, oh, big reveal next week. Initially, my thought was like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm super surprised. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, Wildlands has been like incredibly successful for them. I think they said they've got over like 15 million registered players. It's been like financially successful with a lot of the cosmetic stuff that they've done, and a lot of like the ways you can essentially get like pieces of gear ahead of time if you want. They've expanded all this content on it. And when you think about Ubisoft, they've become like really good at like doing these like 2-3 year releases that are super feature complete, that don't have many issues anymore. Like since the days of Unity, they've come like such a long way in like just making really high class open world sandboxes. And while they don't appeal to everyone, there's definitely an audience that like freaking loves this stuff. So the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, this makes a lot of sense. I was like especially from like a business perspective, this is probably like the most sensible thing they could have done. So it was like, I went from being like, I don't understand, to like, okay, I think I get it now. So
I feel like Unity was kind of that wake up call for Ubisoft, where I think there's a part of me that thinks they were getting comfortable, and then all of a sudden Unity happened, right? You had like the faces, and that was probably one of their lesser received games. But ever since that, they've just been killing it.
yeah, I think like from everybody that I know who works at Ubisoft now, a lot of devs who went there to work on The Division, some of the guys who worked on Lawbreakers who ended up going to work on The Division, some of them are still there. Some of them are on Ghost Recon, some of them were on Far Cry New Dawn and Far Cry 5. Like you just hear nothing but like high praise from the way that they treat their employees there well. And obviously with like the bigger exposure of the way a lot of these studios just ride on crunch, like that's a really positive thing. And I feel like that might have even been something that transitioned with Unity, where it was like, yeah, we can make an entire Assassin's Creed game in like a year and a half. And it's like, actually, you can't. And like bad things happen when you try to do that. So it's cool to see them, come off of that. And like, even if you didn't enjoy a lot of the Assassin's Creed games that have come out since then, like they've all been like pretty damn solid, like entry. Same thing with Far Cry. And so yeah, I'm excited to see this happening. But I'm also excited to see, like, while it seems like a safe play, I saw a lot of people like, oh, it's, essentially Wildlands 2. I'm like, well, yeah, it's the safe play, but it also looks like there's a lot of like cool, like little bits of innovation and change happening with it. So I don't know how much of the like gameplay walkthrough you guys managed to catch today.
Dude, the stealth system, like covering yourself in mud, I thought that was the coolest thing.
That's so cool, man. I love little things like that.
Like a little Metal Gear Solid nod in a way.
Yeah, I got like huge like Snake Eater vibes from like the the new like damage mechanics. So I was wondering like how that works, and from what I've seen, you still like are kind of bullet spongy, right? Obviously it's going to depend on the difficulty you decide to play on, but regardless of that, when you take damage, you now have like damage states. So even though you're like able to take a lot of bullets, a certain amount of damage will trigger like the first damage state. So if you get shot in your right arm, for example, it might cause increased weapon sway and make it harder to aim until you get to a situation where you can like bandage yourself, and eventually you'll go down, which they showcased in that gameplay walkthrough. Now people can actually pick you up, which I love, because like I hate the whole like, oh, revive out in the open mechanic, right? Like you just gotta bide your time and hope that you don't get shot. To me, that's the silliest thing, and it adds like no extra fun. But being able to run over, like pop smoke, pick up your teammate, carry them into a building, and then heal them, that's so cool, man.
The one thing I am nervous about though is, I was starting to read articles right after the debut, and they were talking about that their system to like stay hydrated and to maintain stamina and check your weapons and stuff. I hope they don't go too far into that. Sometimes like that micromanagement of, hey, I want to run, but you need to find rations and eat. I don't know. What do you guys think about that stuff? Is that your thing or not?
I enjoyed that on Metal Gear Survive. Like that mechanic was pretty cool on there, and it just worked. A lot of it really depends on like the scarcity of water, scarcity of food and all that to like keep yourself maintained.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see.
So here's what it says. Yeah. In Breakpoint, players will have to eat rations and stay hydrated to maintain their health and stamina. They'll need to perform weapon maintenance to keep their guns working and accurate. They'll need to treat injuries that otherwise affect their performance.
Yeah,
I hope they don't lean in too hard on that.
The way I look at it, it'll be totally one of those things that's just like flavor. Like it's not going to kill you, right? And there's a game I'm actually playing, and I just realized I can't actually talk about the game itself because it's under NDA, but this game does a similar mechanic where if you're thirsty or if you're hungry, it's not like hardcore survival, like you're not going to die. It essentially just modifies your performance, which is exactly what they're looking to do. So if you're drained on water, that'll affect your stamina. Food might affect your ability to like to heal when you're bandaging. I feel like that sort of thing, like food and water will never be a scarcity issue, right? It'll always be abundant. And at that point, I always do personally question like what's the point of the mechanic, but I think sometimes it's just kind of like an RPG layer, right? Where it's like it doesn't really need to be like this diehard super I've constantly got to be looking for stuff. It can just be flavor, right? And for me, I like stuff like that. I think that can add to it if it's just like a bit of flavor where it's like, okay, before I go into this gunfight, let me make sure I drink water, like, and that could also affect extended gunfights. Maybe you got a really long battle and you're like halfway through the fight and you realize like, oh wow, my aim's kind of like shit. Like what's going on? I gotta heal up, drink up.
Yeah, I sure do hope it's flavor, because like I generally hate that type of mechanic. It just seems to bog. I don't know, just from some experience, like, what I mean, if it bogs it down, I hope that they just go like,
yeah, the way they describe it reminds me of this NDA game that I'm talking about, and like it's super just flavor and it works really well. It's actually, I think it's a lot of fun for a game like that. And when you got a big sandbox, I do like the way they can kind of affect pacing. It's the same thing with like their new stamina mechanic. I really like that. I felt like in Wildlands there was like, I don't know, you just ran all the time. Like I want a little bit more of an incentive to like use vehicles to get good positioning and not just be like, yeah, well, we're on foot and the car's too far away, let's just run because we can run forever, And
did you finish Wildlands?
I did, yeah. I finished it on Xbox and then started playing it again on PC.
Okay, interesting. I couldn't make it all the way through.
It's definitely a like I don't mind it solo, and I'm hoping that their solo is better this time around. They said like you're actually gonna play alone, like a lone wolf with like drones helping you in this, So I think that'll be a cool way to push the solo play and make it more enjoyable rather than just throwing, mediocre AI next to you. But like co-op, the game to me was just, that's where it like really shined. Like I played all of the campaign co-op with my brother, and we just like, we basically played it like modified hardcore. So we played on the harder difficulty, not extreme. I think we played on hardcore, and we turned off almost all of the HUD with just like the marking system on, so we could like make call outs to each other, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think honestly that's probably where I checked that, because I played that. I started playing that campaign solo, and man, my appetite for open world checklist games is dwindling. And I think this game, Ghost Recon had something special for its co-op mode. I hope that it's I don't know, that there's a little bit something more for single player, because I'm getting burned on those open world games.
I think the big issue though with the like even with the co-op was the fact that like, and it kind of looks like it's hard to tell, right? But from like the way that a lot of these like early previews are talking, and then even like this particular like encounter we get in this big outpost, right? Is that there just wasn't like enough, like the stakes were never high enough. Even on the harder difficulties, your biggest concern is like getting shot too many times, right? There weren't enough variation with the enemy types. Everything was just very humdrum, like go in and clear out. And there's like a few things happening with Breakpoint that have me excited. Number one, the AI is supposed to be improved pretty substantially. A lot of people were saying it felt way more on par with the Division 2's AI. And you now have all these variants of enemies, with like absurd body armor, plus you've got the drones you're dealing with, and I think that's kind of what the game needed, right? Like it has the cool tactical sandbox, attack from any angle, but like it doesn't really matter where you push in. It was like, it's the same group of dudes with like the same guns, you know.
Yep.
The different factions were really the only thing that altered that, and like the more challenging factions in the game you didn't really even want to mess with anyway. Like Unidad you just kind of steered clear of, unless it was absolutely necessary. So like having a real enemy threat faction like this with whatever this group's going to call themselves, led by, Coldy Walker, I think that's like a perfect step forward. And I hope that kind of just makes these bigger encounters more exciting, more dynamic, if you will.
Did you play any of the multiplayer mode?
I played a little bit of it. I had problems with like the fact that like sniper rifles were just like all over the place in that mode. I liked it. I wanted to play more of it. I didn't really have anybody to play it with. And like solo, it wasn't really that fun, and it just felt like one of those modes that like as soon as you put long range weapons in, it just kind of like dominates the play style. Like this is what's best, especially on PC. I was playing a lot of it, and it was just like, just always gonna pick a sniper rifle.
This is really interesting to me, because I think you and I have like a complete opposite. Because I put tons of hours into the multiplayer, but again, yeah, I had a squad that played multiplayer, so like I thought that was super fun. Whereas the campaign in Wildlands, I was like, this is a snooze fest for me because I'm playing it solo. But I had a squad of 4 that were playing multiplayer. I think I prestiged 3 or 4 times in
I remember you being like super into it. I still liked it. I thought it was good. I just was like, I'm not gonna play this alone and have to deal with like what feels like just the endless sniper spam type situation.
No, and I think that's my hope too. I know they didn't dive into the multiplayer stuff yet. I'm excited that they said multiplayer is going to be there at launch. I think that was a big slip up for Wildlands 1 when you had to wait 6 months. You get all these people that are hyped up for launch day. They buy their copy, and then right by the time that the multiplayer came out, you probably have a good portion of those people that went to GameStop, traded their game in because they had exhausted everything in the single player, and I'm sure only a fraction of those people might come back and rebuy that game. So having that available at launch, I think, is going to be a really big deal for them. And I hope that they lean in a little bit more. OG and I were talking about this the other day. It seems like every single game now that's been coming out is either a Rainbow Six Siege style, high stakes, you get 1 life. You got Apex Legends, you got 1 life, Battle Royale. I'm kind of hoping that they maybe take a little bit of inspiration from some of their older Ghost Recon games. I was really big into Future Soldier, and, even just putting something as simple as letting, you respawn and have a little bit of fun there. I think there's some potential for some new fun modes that I hope they implement, and that it's not just a typical, 4v4 1 life only. I hope they take that to the next level too.
Yeah, I guess that stuff's always hard, right? Because like I'm personally like super burnt out on team deathmatch stuff, but I see the value of like having it, is like as long as you can make a mode that like functions really well around it. But at the same time, I'd love to see them have like something that is sort of like 1 life, but that goes beyond just being like, it's just last man standing. Like where's like how do you make like a new exciting like 4v4 PvP mode? And that's always like a challenge, I guess, with any games. PvP systems.
Yep.
It's like, how do we not
Wildlands
just
is
do the same
basically
thing?
Yeah, Wildlands to me was just like an extension of Siege. You know, it took a lot of those ideas from Rainbow Six Siege, but you know, those games are pretty hardcore. And like as you mentioned, if you want to play those solo, you know, those are kind of tough to jump into. So I'm at least hoping they put something. And it doesn't even have to be team deathmatch. I'm just thinking something that's a little bit more forgiving. If you know you've got a half hour you want to play by yourself,
Yeah,
that you're
modes
just
that are
not gonna.
built for quick play. Yeah, not just
Yeah, that
everything
you can
feeling
jump
like
in, have a
rank.
good time. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I get what you're saying there. I do like that they're carrying like your character across all the modes now as well. That's cool. That's like probably a good bonus of having PvP at launch is now like the character you make in your campaign or your single player is the same character you'll carry over into PvP. So it's like just one clear progression thing. I saw some people mention too, and like I couldn't really get like a full detail thing on. I don't know if it was just kind of like a misspeak, but talking about like at the start of the game picking a class. So it seems like they're, from what I got, I couldn't find like any post that like went into this more. It's just one post they mentioned it, and it seems like they might be having like split class trees this time around, like for both the single player campaign and for the multiplayer, since it's one character. So instead of just everyone having like a okay, here's a set of classes, like here's a set of trees, just run through them. Now you actually have like, you know, different classes with their own trees, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I do like that layer too. I think that'll at least make it a little bit more interesting, especially if somebody's looking to do multiple playthroughs or something, you know, varying up your plays.
Should definitely, you know, boost up the co-op experience too, because that's like a problem I had with Wildlands was like, I thought the game gave you way too much flexibility, which is actually why I liked Ghost Mode when that came out, where it was one primary and a sidearm. I always felt like the two weapons thing was overkill, and I know they're probably going to have it in Breakpoint at launch, but I really wish they would limit the player more, because I think when you say to the player, oh, here's two primary weapons plus a pistol, and it's 4-player co-op, it's kind of like, okay, well, we can all just run sniper rifles plus a close quarters gun. You're like way too flexible, you know, and it kind of like downplays the value of having individual roles in co-op. And I don't know. I wasn't personally a fan of that. I felt like a little bit more restriction would have been better for the co-op experience. And so I'm kind of hoping that those classes give that incentive for somebody to be like, I'm the sniper, and I'll kind of like, you know, cover your back, you know, the back door. I'll get a high ground. Just force players to, or at least give them the option to look at a map, look at a specific location and be like, okay, we can do this, you know, in a much more like tactical, much more planned way if we want to. Not forced, but.
OP, what's your history like with Ghost Recon?
I played a good amount of it, and then I don't remember what game came out, and I just put it down. The experience was cool. I enjoyed a bit of it that I did play. The gunplay was cool. The weapons are cool. I remember like the progression felt Far Cry like, I guess, like the newer Far Cries, where you have to like do so much to access the boss, and that was, yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Did you jump into PvP at all?
No, I haven't tried out the PvP. I'm also hoping that there's gonna be, I mean, I'm down with the current mode that's there. Like, I don't remember what it was. It's like one life mode on Wildlands currently, but love to see some TDM type stuff. Love to see some variety in the PvP. So I just need some different PvP experiences right now.
Yeah, because Future Soldier was my jam back in the day. I put tons of hours into there, and they had a Future Soldier. I felt like had a really good mix of Ghost Recon style mechanics, but they also, I think that was the first game in the series that pushed, you know, a little bit more pace in the game, and I really enjoyed that. And they had a variety of modes. Now I know that game is basically a ghost town now, and you know, if you do get into a match, there's always hackers, but like movement was important in that game, you know, positioning, but it wasn't as slow as some of the other ones, and it was a really cool mix and something that was different for the series. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe that they channel some of that game's, you know, spirit in this next one, but I guess we'll see as time comes. I'm guessing we'll probably see some of that stuff at E3.
Yeah, you'd think we'd see more with the October release date later this year. Not that far off.
Somebody had brought this up earlier in my chat. So we're gonna have raids. Is there gonna be loot that we get from the raids? Like, what's the incentive for going through these raids? Like, maybe there's a loot system they haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, as far as I know, there is a loot system that I haven't seen anybody like get super fleshed out details on, but there is like some sort of a new loot system in the game now that I haven't seen anybody expand on yet, but I have seen mention of it by a couple content creators, YouTubers actually have mentioned it. So yeah,
Cool.
I don't know where that's going or how that's going. I mean, they kind of had like, you know, a basic form of that with like the unique weapons, like the ones you got off of defeating the bosses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could see them, you know, like expanding on that and just giving us a system that's, yeah, I guess somewhat akin to that. It'll just be interesting to see what sort of like bonuses and perks they give. Definitely seems like there's some inspirations coming from the Division 2 here. It's kind of like when they first announced this, I was like, oh, they're mentioning drones. Like, how do you make drones like more hardcore? Well, you do like the Division 2 did, where you've got like drone dogs, and you know, like this game has a bunch of that autonomous stuff. So it's cool to see them kind of like influencing one another.
Yeah, the drones looked awesome, and I don't know. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's
What if they're gonna bring back that cloak tech? That was pretty cool.
like the
They
future
mentioned
soldier
it
stuff.
in the intro to it, right? They showed it off. I wonder if that'll sneak its way into the...
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they like how that would fit in. I mean, obviously, you know, fits perfectly for like a stealth thing. It'll be cool to see him kind of come back on that. It's so Future Soldier's like such a weird point in like Ghost Recon's history because it was like the, you know, sort of the finalization of like where they were going with Advanced Warfighter. But it kind of reached a point where it was like 99% of the tech in Future Soldier was no longer like future tech. It was like actually the military's been using this for like 10 years. You know, like like a lot of the like infrared stuff, and the only thing in there that was really far-fetched was like the cloaking tech. You know, but like the drones became like normalized. It's like actually drones are a huge thing in warfare now. And so then Wildlands like had a bunch of that stuff, but it was normal. And so now it's like coming back on itself like full circle. And they're like, well, if we just make crazy like autonomous like ATVs with armor plating and machine guns, then there you go. It's future tech again. So
How much into the future is this new game? Did they mention how far into the future this game is supposed to be set?
I don't know where the timeline is anymore. I think Future Soldier is like I think it's like it's supposed to be like 20 years, I think, beyond where we are now. But I think Wildlands potentially like rolls back into like a more modern setting. I think it's not.
And where was
to be.
Breakpoint after that?
So Breakpoint's supposed to take point like almost immediately after Wildlands.
Immediately, okay.
Yeah, because the character John Bernthal's character is essentially supposed to like steal this drone army and go rogue, and he's supposed to kill. I believe he kills the other 3 members of your crew. So Nomad survives. And then 3 new ghosts come in, and he's like kind of getting revenge on Bernthal for the death of the other 3 characters. Unless we find out they went rogue too. So I don't know like exactly what happened to them. They're just not there anymore.
He's gonna be such a badass villain. I'm so excited for that.
It's totally what the game needs too. Like the story and the dialogue in Wildlands is terrible. It's like the most bare bones, like just low effort writing. Just get it in the game.
Generic military shooter.
Yeah, it's awful. And I know, like, I see people already like, oh, I can't believe they killed off the 3 characters. I love their banter. I was like, what? You loved hearing them say cock holster and shitballs? Like, it was just so. It wasn't even like gruff military dude stuff. It was just like a bunch of guys just bullshitting, and then somebody decided to put it in the game, right? Like it was so bad, and I don't expect it to be amazing, but at least with John Bernthal's character in there, it's like, okay, well, we have a villain who, like, you know, as long as he's got decent lines, can pretty much make that role work as like a serious, like, you know, we've actually got like a big single guy to go up against. Like, here's the dude who we want to take down. And from the walkthrough, the character dialogue sounded a lot better for our character even, so that was nice. Like, just make it feel like there's a story being told, you know? I don't actually need military guys bullshitting Simulator 2019, you know? We want some sort of a narrative, so we'll see where that goes. Shall we talk Borderlands 3?
Let's do it.
Who wants to start? Who's the most excited about Borderlands 3 in here? On a 1 through 10,
I don't think I am.
What's your excitement level at? Both you guys.
I'm at like a 6 right now.
A 6? How about you count?
I'm probably at like a 7.
A 7? I'd say I'm up there. I'm higher than I was before I saw gameplay. So I like went back and I played Borderlands 2, played Borderlands 1, and I was reminded just how much I hate the core like gunplay experience in those games, and I think it's terrible. And I think everything about it is bad, and I almost made a video where I just literally complained about how terrible shooting in that game is, because it's like they do this thing, right, in Borderlands where instead of like the weapons actually having like a recoil system where the bullets deviate, they shake the player camera. And it's like the worst thing ever when you like become super conscious of it and you're like, why did the shooting always feel like real wonky in this game? You're like, oh, because they shake the camera and then just have like random bullet RNG instead of just having bullet RNG. But Borderlands 3 doesn't look like it's doing that. And there's like all these new movement mechanics. So that like increases my excitement level to like an 8 or a 9.
I think I am. Yeah, I am excited about just some of those small. I mean, it's kind of funny that we get excited that you can slide and mantle, but that'll go a long way in those games. Some of the most frustrating parts of that, when you try and jump up to a ledge or something, you just clip it. So you got to find the way to jump up on that building, and just being able to let you traverse a little bit easier and do stuff. I think little change, but that'll go a long way.
Yeah, I
Super excited
mean,
about the alternate fires and the guns too. I think that's gonna make it feel a little bit more fresh.
yeah, I'm stoked to see them just like trying to push up their variety bar, because I feel like that was one thing Borderlands 2 did really well, was just like lots of variety in like the weapons and the way you engage the enemy. Just didn't feel that great. But so now they're like, well, everything technically has like 2 modes in which you can, and that goes back to like what I think is like, the strongest points of first person shooters that have been abandoned over the years for like the sake of like the military, real shooty COD thing, right? Is like suddenly guns don't have 2 cool alternate fire modes. And now it's kind of coming back with like Doom and, Rage 2 does a bunch of that. And also like movement tech coming back, right? Like for a long time, like the best shooters back in the day had like just even simple, fun like movement tech, like strafe jumping and stuff. And then, we kind of got like Halo and Call of Duty and that all went away. And now I feel like it's coming full circle. People are like, oh, actually, it's really cool when you empower the player, not just through like damage, but through movement. I think that's like the best thing ever. So that is literally the thing I'm most excited about with the entire game at this point for sure.
How do you guys feel about the where do you fall on like the humor? I know that some people are hit or miss, Claptrap especially. Are you do you think Claptrap is funny? You like that style of humor, or get old for you?
Yeah, Claptrap kind of like makes me cringe and all. It's not really my kind of humor.
I like him. He's just like stupid, goofy character, right? Like he works for like what he's supposed to do. I feel like it's hard to write a character like that who would be like serious, high level like humor. Plus, I guess like humor is just different for everybody. There's like parts of Borderlands I like, and parts of it that I think are like still dated and just kind of weird. And I don't know. The humor for me has always been like all over the place. Like some of it I like, and some of it I'm just like, like really? Why is
Like
that
it's
even need
forced
to
a little bit.
be there? Yeah, it's like some of it I just find weird. I find like the whole small people thing super weird. I always did. Like the idea of just like, midget mutants running around. I'm just like, okay, I don't get it. It's like a million ways you could make a mutant, and like you're just like, let's just make small ones with big heads and long arms. I'm like, all right, it's a bit weird. But yeah, so I don't know. It's ups and downs for me. I do like a lot of the key characters. I feel like they've been pretty well written over the year, like Hammerlock, he's like a fun, like, personality. So I guess as long as there's more characters like that, I'll be.
I think they have an
happy with
interesting
it.
way of making that game accessible to new players while still giving, returning fans. I like the idea that some of the characters that are, NPCs in like the games are characters you used to play as. I know they showed a couple. You run into Zero, and they give a little bit of context of like who this guy is. He was the assassin you got to play in Borderlands 2. But it was an interesting. I can't remember who was mentioning, but there was an interview with the guy about, well, how come you can't necessarily just play with like those characters again? Why don't you bring them back? And they were talking about how internally at the studio they wanted to do things like respecking those characters or putting in
Yeah,
new
easy.
ultimates, new move sets and stuff, and that
Yeah, I
people
saw
would just get
Bloodworth
pissed
talking
off.
about that.
So like I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I like that approach. I think that's a cool way to bring them in, and even if you don't know who that guy is, you don't have to. But if you recognize the character, you get a little bit of fan service there too.
Yeah, I like the way they've done that. I feel like they've done a good job in just constantly kind of pushing their universe forward and not like having to restart it like so many games do, especially like big co-op games. I feel like are there's like no real connection. Like the Division 2, for example, is just like, it's this long after the Division 1, and like nothing really matters from before because things are different and still kind of terrible. Like here is just like this one constant thread of like, okay, things are happening, and like here's the characters, they're still around, things have happened to them. I do like that.
I think the art style is really good too. I mean, it's one of those art styles that's pretty timeless. It looks good, it ages well, and I can tell. I don't know you couldn't put my finger on it, but even just the video that we've been seeing for Borderlands 3, everything just looks like a little bit sharper, a little bit more detail in the environment. You're not getting like a lot of the blurry textures I think that you get. So, although it doesn't look entirely that different, I feel like it does look pretty sharp.
Oh yeah, I think it's the crazy thing is like when I saw it I was like, okay, this obviously looks much better, but if you put it side to side with Borderlands 2, oh my lord. is night and day, dude. It's one of those things where you wouldn't think that much of it. You're like, it looks a bit better, it looks a bit sharper, a little more clarity. But then when you put it next to Borderlands 2, like just the shading and the lighting effects and like the reflection tech and like it just actually does, it looks like substantially better. Whereas like before I can put them side by side, I was like, it looks better, you know. But they
Sure,
definitely
yeah.
they definitely leveled up. I feel like the lighting is probably one of the biggest things. Like the lighting in Borderlands 2 is not great. I don't know, like, you know, they probably made some changes to tech and how they light things. It just seems more dynamic here. And like all those reflective surfaces that didn't exist before make like, you know, some of the like the starting kind of poopy guns even look much better than they did before. So that's pretty cool.
What's your guys' take on the fact that it's more Borderlands, right? What's your gut reaction to like, hey, this game looks like more of the same? Are you in favor of that? Do you wish they would have taken more risks? Do you appreciate the fact that, hey, if you like the games, you're gonna like this one? You know, I know that's a pretty hot debate around, you know, how much are they innovating? Curious what you guys think.
How you feeling,
Um,
OP?
I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see more personally. I like that they touched up on a lot of the things that were clunky before. Thematic movement's huge, and just the fact that there's gonna be more missions, just a new adventure, will be nice. I feel like too many companies at this point are trying to be too different. So I'm all for just
I
a
think
similar
I'm with
familiar.
you 100%.
Yeah, I'm hyped.
Yeah, I think the demand, so like the consumer constantly demands new, right? And this is just like a human nature thing, right? Humans think they want something new, but they don't. They want the same thing slightly different. And then when they
Mhm.
get the same thing slightly different, they bitch about it until they actually get hands on with it. And then they're like, actually, this is perfect. Because had they made it substantially different, there's just, you end up splitting the fan base. And there's a bunch of people who are willing, who are, you know, able to accept those sorts of things. Like Halo 5 Guardians, perfect example of this. I think Halo 5 Guardians has like one of the best competitive Halo multiplayer since Halo 2. And a portion of the community feels the same way. But then there's this other portion of the community that's like, oh, remove mantling and get rid of sprinting. And why can you shoulder charge? We should just make it like Halo 2 again. And I just think that's the most bizarre thing ever. Because I'm like, why would you want like Halo 2 in 2020? Like, you know, let them keep pushing forward. And if you don't like it, then I'm sorry. But like, oh, well, things like should transition and change, even if it's a little bit. And that's like, you know, Borderlands, like, I feel like just has the sweet spot right now where it's like, okay, it's like different enough that they're making these changes and people will be happy, but there's going to be instead a group of people who are like, it's not different enough. You should have like gave us 3 arms and 4 guns or something, you know? Like, I don't know what people really want. Like, when people scream innovation,
Yeah.
I'm just like, but what? Like, if you can't think of something clever right now, just bullshitting off the top of your head, then chances are the devs tried a bunch of stuff and a lot of it just didn't work, you know? I think everybody just thinks like game development's just like, we chose this path and this is it. Now there's a huge phase where they were prototyping and concepting. They probably tried a bunch of new ideas, and who knows, maybe we even haven't seen some of those ideas yet. You know, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes this makes for a better gameplay experience.
Honestly, I think it, you know, it's refreshing that it feels familiar enough. Because I mean, even just kind of watching the video we've got rolling now, you know, there's a lot of things that are familiar there. You see some, you know, some tweaks, some UI enhancements. Things are a little bit cleaner. You can see some new dynamics about customizing things you maybe couldn't customize before. But at the core, it feels like Borderlands. And you know, Borderlands, in my opinion, has a pretty dedicated fan base. Right, those people are pretty loyal. And you know, in a world where we live in, Tony, to your point, where like, you know, Halo changed up the formula. We've got, you know, a bunch of Titanfall fans that might not be happy that Apex is a battle royale. It's kind of refreshing in a sense that this is, you know, this is the game that a lot of people wanted, and it looks like that's the game that Gearbox is making for them.
Yeah, I mean, some games just don't need to change, right? Like they're in the perfect position. Like, unfortunately, Titanfall has never been in a financial position to be the same thing. You know, like as much as people want slide hopping and all these things, I'm like, I'm sorry, but like the game did not sell well enough to warrant that, unfortunately. And that's like just that's capitalism and the environment video games are made in, you know. Borderlands did
Yep.
though. The game sold like hotcakes. It's, you know, people have been like hyped over for so long, enough so where Gearbox was able to sit there for 6 years and just make this game, you know, and who knows how massive it's going to be, like with all the different worlds.
And I mean, even just a simple change, right? If you're looking at the way the mini map works, you can pull up a map. And one of my biggest frustrations with the old Borderland games is, you know, you're going to try and clear the map, but there's that piece of the map that's, you know, grayed off in the fog of war. And you're like, how do you get to that? You know, you pull up this game and it's like, hey, there's a 3D map. People are rotating. You can see where you're going. You know, just those nice little quality of life things that people don't even realize were frustrating will be in this game. And it's like, it's just going to be a really well refined Borderlands experience. And I think people are gonna love it. I think this game is gonna sell
Yeah.
big time.
I think as lukewarm as I might be on it right now, I'm probably gonna play it with 4 friends in co-op, and it's gonna be like, oh, this is like
Have
the
a great time.
greatest co-op experience I've had in a while. It is. It's like it's funny because this and Breakpoint are like on that exact same path, right? Like where people really also undervalue small changes, like small gameplay concepts are extremely undervalued, which I think is interesting because in an age of indie games that are entirely based around single ideas, like take Bennett Foddy's Getting Over It. I don't know if you've ever seen that game, but it's the dude in the pot
Yep.
and he crimes, right? That's it. He literally came up with one little tiny gameplay concept and made an entire game out of it. And so many indie games exist like that, and they can be like just game changing for the fun factor. Gears of War is a great game because like they were like, okay, it's a cover based shooter, nobody's really done that, but how else can we like change something people have done one way for like 20 plus years? Well, let's make an active reload mechanic where you manually reload your gun. When I saw that when they first announced Gears of War, I lost my shit. That's the coolest thing ever, dude. And it still is. It's still like one of the most satisfying pieces of shooter design. Like it's all it takes sometimes, just little things.
Agreed. I'm excited too. I think a lot of the environments they've shown off to this, this cyberpunk dystopian world that they have in there, I think is a pretty cool departure from what they've usually been doing. I'm sure they'll have their dust wastelands and stuff, but at least so far what they've been teasing, it seems like the worlds are going to be varied and stuff. Enough visual variety to keep you interested. And they've always done a pretty good job, right? These games are not short by any means. They've always done a really good job, in my opinion, on their DLC packs, right? Whatever they push out typically has, a pretty decent campaign length. There's a lot of stuff to do. So I'm hoping that we continue to see new and interesting environments like we're looking at here. But I think that looks promising too, just to go to somewhere else other than right like a desert or the moon.
Yeah, they're like that's another thing too, like in terms of like, improving the visuals of the game. Like all the environments they showcased looked absolutely bonkers, man. Like there's so much detail to like every little nook and cranny. Like when you watch the if you see the gameplay where they pushed up into they fought like the DJ boss.
Yep.
There's just like signage and graffiti everywhere and like barely anything is repeated. It was just like it looked incredible. And on that topic, speaking of gameplay changes, the idea that they're focusing more on bosses, there is like so much of this game that like it's more Borderlands, but it has the potential to be like leveled up, right? And the idea that they're gonna do all these boss battles, if they're as cool and as unique as that DJ fight is, where he's like using speakers to like bounce you around the the environment and damage you, that's going to be a super cool part of the game. Like, that's something that I also feel these sorts of like co-op games, like are kind of hit and miss on. Destiny has like some really good like strike bosses, but a lot of them just feel like blah, But then when you look at a game like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, for example, like so many of their bosses are unique and varied. And even if they're not fun to fight, they're still unique and varied. And that's kind of how I hope Borderlands 3 can be.
Yep, agree with that. Yeah, I think I'm optimistic on it for sure. I think I'm getting more excited as we're talking about it. Just like, oh, some of these concepts are like, yeah, maybe I did underappreciate that a little bit, but I'm getting hyped. I'm on the.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to admit that we're spoiled. I'm spoiled personally, I'll say, like with video games to the point where I'm like, oh, Borderlands 3, okay. Why should I be really excited for this? And it's like, well, there's like a million reasons to be excited for this. You just have also like a million games releasing between now and then that I'm also hyped for. So it's like I'm like just thinking about Rage 2. That's all I can think about, for like the last like 5 days. I like booted up Metro, playing Metro Exodus, and I'm like, this game is fucking incredible. But Rage 2, like you just gravitate towards those things. It's like if you were a kid again, you're like 6 years old, and your parents told you this summer you're gonna go to 10 different theme parks. You'd be losing your mind. Like the only thing that would matter is the thing that's closest to you. And even if you literally just like got Stan Lee's autograph while, getting thrown 3,000 feet in the air by Superman, as if that was a real thing, you would forget about that in 3 days and be like, oh, that was cool. But also I'm going to this place tomorrow, like that's totally how video game releases are. It's way too easy to just be like, wow, actually excited about this, but also this. Candles asks, what do you guys think about the level instancing system?
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that's a fantastic solution to, like the biggest problem co-op games have, which is like, I think it's funny because I feel like we kind of solved the first problem, right? Which is how do you play with your friends who are lower level than you? That's usually been solved, right? It's like, okay, you can play with your friends and we'll scale difficulty, but that means for you personally, you are essentially giving up progression opportunities. And in a loot-focused game, you're usually giving up the opportunity to get new loot for your character because the loot's always going to be under-leveled. And instead, it no longer is. It's like, actually, you get to get, you know, the same awesome loot you'd get if you were playing, you know, 20 hours into the campaign rather than 5 hours into the campaign. Like,
so I haven't read up too much on that. Can you break down again what their approach is?
So there's two modes. You can play in classic mode, which is like the way it used to be, and you know, kind of like power level people. The modern mode instances your loot, right? So if I'm playing, say my friend is level 5 and he just started playing the game this past weekend, he got like 2 hours in, and we're like, all right, Sunday we'll play together. I've been playing for 25 hours. I'm level 25. So we go into a mission together. The enemies are going to be scaled, so I don't do like absurd damage and just kill everything for him. I'm going to have a challenge. He's going to have a challenge. And then when we go to loot, since the loot is separated, he's going to get level 5 loot. I'm going to get relevant level 25 loot.
Interesting. So how do they, and I'm not sure if you even know this, but how do they handle like, right, so if you're jumping in on that campaign, obviously you're probably going to be playing like you're like the beginning level zones, right? Are you still getting your level, or you know what I'm trying to ask, or like is beginning game zones you're still fighting under?
Yeah, so
under
they literally just scale like the amount of damage those enemies will take and like the amount of damage you do to equate it out. So you'll still be dealing with those like lower level enemies, but you'll still be having like a threat. You know, they won't just be like easy. You won't be able to just cut through them and mow through them because you're level 25. Like damage difficulty will get scaled. And then just to compensate for that, you also get like the loot that you would want to get, you know, if you were level 25. You get to continue to progress your character and not just be like, oh, we're in an early zone, so it means I also get level 5 guns. It's like, no, you get level 25 guns.
So it's kind of like you're always playing your single player instance, basically.
Yeah, basically, however you decide to play the game, if you're playing solo, if you're playing with friends, regardless of what level they are, you're always going to be playing at whatever level it is that you currently are. And you'll always get a challenge to, you know, to go with it.
Yeah, like, I really like that. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's just like, yeah, perfect, you know. That you know, the character that you played, you know, for 30 hours and you're like, dude, I'm so stoked to have these cool abilities, but I got to spend the entire weekend playing with my friends who are level 1, you know. You don't have to lose any of that stuff. You could still have that character and still get worthwhile loot. Like, that's so cool, man.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. That's always been a problem with those. I mean, that's for a lot of the reason why there's people I know stop playing Destiny, stop playing, you know, even the Division to some extent, is because you have that 1 week where you're gone for work, you're visiting family, whatever, while your other friends are grinding. You come back, they've spent a week, and then you're like, well, I guess I'm out. You know, this is a cool solution to not necessarily have to have that problem anymore.
Yeah, it's so much better, man. So much better. Now, if they would just confirm crossplay.
Oh, isn't that the dream?
That's all they gotta do.
Do you have a hope for that, or just
so
pipe dream?
There was like a small so apparently when they first announced the game, right, on the Windows Store, where apparently they're also gonna like, you know, where you can kind of like see where you can buy the game for Xbox, they had a crossplay icon. It got removed, but part of me is like,
I remember on Xbox, right?
This is something they could be working on, you know, like, and I hope it is. Like, personally, I'm just like, I just need between Xbox and PC. But obviously it'd be nice if it was between everywhere, like PlayStation, like all of that. I mean, just think about that. Like, you know, OP, you normally play on PlayStation 4, like I normally play on PC or Xbox. Like, it'd be great to just not have any of that matter for once in a game where it really matters, you know, like it is the bane of
I think
co-op.
My dream is, like, I even understand that, you know, sometimes, you know, they, you know, Sony, Microsoft, whoever, don't necessarily want people playing multiplayer with each other. But I'm like still waiting for that day where at least give us like a cloud save where you can upload your character, right? So if you know, if I have to buy the stinking game twice, on Xbox once, on PC once, let me upload my character to some, you know, cloud save that you run and at least pull it down. Like, that's, at least give me that, you know, even if you can't get over the contract dispute of having those two platforms play with each other, it'd be nice to keep your mission progress, especially on these games, right? These games require tons of time. You're grinding for loot. You finally get a drop or a gun that you love, and then you're like, hey, my buddy wants to play. Oh, wait, he's on Xbox or he's on PC. Well, damn it. You know what I mean? I guess I got to start over again. That's always so frustrating.
Yeah, I think cross save is like, needs to be the bare minimum of those two options moving forward. Like that's like the biggest thing I wanted of like any next gen platform is like just cross save, made as easy as possible to put it in the game by the developers, and like the contract always being there. So when they start working on a project, the first thing that they know is in the list is like, this is being built for crossplay or for cross save, at the very least. Because like it just becomes a matter of like, like you got a customer who's willing to buy your game twice to play with different groups of friends, and you're literally just wasting their time as a consumer. Like, oh, they're going to, and you don't provide like any service to like get around that. And it's just like Sony, especially with stuff, man, it's just like, come on.
And I think for like us three, right, as people who create content and have these communities and play, games across all different platforms, right? There's some games that we play on PC. There are some games that we play on console with our communities. You always have to make this choice when a game comes out of like, okay, where am I going to get it? And I don't know if you guys do the same, but there's typically a couple weeks or even months up where you're polling your community members. Hey, where are you guys all getting the game? Because you're trying to make a purchasing decision of where you're going to, in quotes, main this game. And it's like the day where we can get over that and not have to necessarily, alienate a third of your community because they didn't make the cut of where you picked up a game would be, a nice day to live in.
Yeah, it's been silly. It continues to be silly, especially when you talk like where there's no like concern for mouse and keyboard versus this. And even then, all that stuff's nonsense anyways. Just give controller users aim assist and call it a freaking day already.
Even something like this, right? This is like a perfect example of who cares.
It's completely irrelevant. Yeah, there's no concern for any of that. It's all just on the the publisher, the corporation side of it being like, it's just so silly, right? Because it's like one of those few industries where that's like an issue, like when I go out and I buy a toothbrush, I don't have to then use like a certain brand of toothpaste with all of my toothbrush. like toothpaste is cross-platform. I can use it wherever I want. No, you've been buying Colgate this whole time. It's just like it's weird to me because you are essentially taking away like your customer's choice, right? At the totally broken idea that you're like gonna make more money that way. But the reality is you have a group of people, and the majority of the time they're making console purchase decisions when the new generation comes around based on what their friends are doing. Almost all my friends have been kind of like hooked onto Xbox, and like I buy all the platforms, so I'm like that lucky person. Doesn't really matter what they buy, but they're almost all like, okay, Xbox, we're going Xbox. But quite a few of them would rather have a PlayStation 4 or vice versa. And, because they know like, well, I'm not going to be able to crossplay with you, then they just end up going Xbox. You would potentially have a bunch of people who are like, well, actually, I'll just buy the console I want because it doesn't really matter. And the majority of the games that I know I'm going to play in co-op, I'll be able to play in co-op without any issue.
And oddly enough, like my perspective on a lot of that is I think I'd be more inclined, like for example, for Borderlands 3 here, right? It's definitely a game I'm probably only going to play, I don't know if I've got the capacity just with, work and life to be able to grind this game 3 different times, right? So I'm going to find a place, whether that be on PC or on console, that I'm going to primarily play. If something like cross save were enabled, I'd probably be more inclined to buy this game 3 times on launch day. And I bet there's a lot of people out there that are like that too. If there's no restriction as to like bringing my character, well then shoot, I'll play with all of my friends. Like if you're, in a situation where you can afford to do that, I think I'd be more inclined to spend more money up front if something like that was implemented, not necessarily. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, because instead it's like you're paying for the price of like having your character in its current state transferred to another thing. It's like paying for a server transfer in World of Warcraft. Like, no, I'm not gonna make a new character to play on that server when I could just have my character transferred, or have it essentially duplicated in one way or another. Yeah, it's like they have to know too. Like again, it's just this stupid little grimy like greedy decision of maybe we'll get some people, because the real thing that sells platforms is console exclusives. It's like been that way forever, like it's not going to change, right? Nobody's asking you to like make sure that everybody can play your exclusives on every platform and not make them exclusives anymore. Like, like Sony's platform sold really well because they had a lot of first party games in the style of games that weren't being released by anyone else. No one else was making like big single player games like Spider-Man and Uncharted. Like they dominated that market, and therefore they were able to do well. Not because they decided, oh, well, screw you guys, you don't get cross-platform for Fortnite until like the very last moment. Like they didn't make $1 off of that. So it's just a silly archaic thing. It's time to go away.
It's the dream.
It's the dream. The cross-play, at least cross-save. This is dream. What did I see too? I was actually, speaking of like progress carrying over, there was a game that I was like literally just looking at that was like, oh, your progress will carry over across. No, I don't remember what game it was. I don't think it was Ghost Recon, but that would be cool too. That's another game. I got like 400 hours on Xbox One. It'd be great to have all my stuff over on PC. You know, just save it through the Uplay thing. Well,
I can only hope that's the future of gaming.
Yeah, right. Like, just stop. Just do it. Just give it to us already. I'm gonna buy all of your consoles anyway.
All right.
Hook me up. Hook me up.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, the next time we meet, Rage 2 will be out, so that's cool. I can't stop thinking about the game.
I'm so ready.
What's the date? What's the date on that one?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday? Okay.
Tuesday.
I always have a hard time keeping track. Like, is it a Friday release? Is it a Tuesday release?
Yeah, right. It used to just be everything was like guaranteed Tuesday release. Now it's like Friday releases.
Yeah. When did that? That's a separate topic for a different day. But I don't know when that.
When did
paradigm
that become
shifted
a
of,
thing?
like Fridays became.
I feel like it was
release
Call of Duty did that. Those trendsetters. Those trendsetters. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, the show will be available via VOD as soon as it ends in case you joined in late. We'll also have it up over on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and spam these links for these fine gentlemen. And of course, don't forget Count is doing St. Jude stuff this May. So if you want to check in, pop in a stream, and donate for a good cause, be sure to do that. Thank you so much for hanging out, listening to us ramble. We will see you all in the next one.